I'm going to talk about Canada and in the context of Afghanistan, and possibly come up with some perspective on why we're there, why we should be there. Thank you for the lights. I'm just going to start with a little bit of Google Maps here, and possibly give the geography of Afghanistan. If you look where Europe is, where China is, India, it's right smack dab in the middle. And it's got a long, torturous history. And I was reading about the history of Afghanistan. I'm not going to go too far back, but I believe in the early 1900s, the different tribal segments of Afghanistan, they were actually living in harmony. I think it was under a king, and I think it was this king facilitated a harmony between all the different tribal groups, and the country was working very well. Guess who came in the 20s and buggered it all up? The British. And I believe it was over resources, and I think it was over oil and gas reserves. I could be wrong about that. But if you look at where the oil and gas is in the Middle East, Saudi Arabia, obviously Iraq, Iran, and one of the reasons that the Soviets were interested in Afghanistan is they weren't just invading Afghanistan, it was all these countries above. It was Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, and there are large oil and gas reserves in all through this region. Afghanistan itself does not have a lot of oil and gas reserves. However, it does have a lot of mineral wealth, and it's believed that Afghanistan may have the second largest uranium deposits in the world next to Saskatchewan. Guess who's in there exploring for uranium? Any company names?
Cameco.
Cameco is in Afghanistan exploring for uranium. So the resources of this whole region is one reason. Also, there is a strategic place for military bases. Afghanistan actually has a border with China. There's a small one that's just right in here. It's beside Pakistan, and it's beside Iran, which is a concern of the United States. So there's resources. There are trillions of cubic meters of natural gas in this region and billions of barrels of oil. It's one of the largest reserves of oil and gas left on the planet. So there's a little bit of geography of where it sits within the world. One thing I wasn't clear of before I looked at a globe is that the large border with Iran. So I'm going to go from that to playing a clip from Fahrenheit 9/11. How many have seen Fahrenheit 9/11? Okay. How long ago? When did it come out? I think this was 2002 or 2003. It's quite a while ago. I'm going to start with a little clip from this film. Bear with me, and hopefully the sound will come up.
No. It was Iraq, Saddam, find out, get back to me.
And were his questions more about Iraq than about Al-Qaeda?
Static on the line.
Absolutely. He didn't ask me about Al-Qaeda.
And the reaction you got that day from the defense secretary, Don Rumsfeld, from his assistant, Paul Wolfowitz?
Well, Don Rumsfeld said...
They're talking about Iraq,
he
how it gets into
bombing
Afghanistan.
Al-Qaeda infrastructure in Afghanistan. He said there were no good targets in Afghanistan. Let's bomb Iraq. And we said, but Iraq had nothing to do with this. And that didn't seem to make much difference. And the reason they had to do Afghanistan first was it was obvious that Al-Qaeda had attacked us, and it was obvious that Al-Qaeda was in Afghanistan. The American people wouldn't have stood by if we had done nothing on Afghanistan.
States began bombing Afghanistan just 4 weeks after 9/11. Mr. Bush said he was doing so because the Taliban government of Afghanistan had been harboring bin Laden.
We will smoke them out of their holes. We're going to smoke them out. Smoke them out. Smoke them out of this cave.
I'm sorry.
Let's rush them and smoke them out.
All this tough talk, Bush really didn't do much.
But what they did was slow and small. They put only 11,000 troops into Afghanistan. There are more police here in Manhattan, than there are U.S. troops in Afghanistan. Basically, the president botched the response to 9/11. He should have gone right after bin Laden. The U.S. Special Forces didn't get into the area where bin Laden was for 2 months.
2 months? A mass murderer who attacked the United States was given a 2-month head start? Who in their right mind would do that?
Anybody say nice shot? Nice shot. I want a shot.
Or was the war in Afghanistan really about something else? Perhaps the answer was in Houston, Texas. In 1997, while George W. Bush was governor of Texas, a delegation of Taliban leaders from Afghanistan flew to Houston to meet with UNICAL executives to discuss the building of a pipeline through Afghanistan, bringing natural gas from the Caspian Sea. And who got a Caspian Sea drilling contract the same day UNICAL signed the pipeline deal? A company headed by a man named Dick Cheney, Halliburton.
From the point of view of the U.S. government, this was kind of a magic pipeline because it could serve so many purposes.
And who else stood to benefit from the pipeline? Bush's #1 campaign contributor, Kenneth Lay, and the good people of Enron. Only the British press covered this trip. Then in 2001, just 5.5 months before 9/11, the Bush administration welcomed a special Taliban envoy to tour the United States to help improve the image of the Taliban government.
You have imprisoned the women. It's a horror, let me tell you.
And I'm really sorry to your husband. He meant to have a very difficult time with you.
Here's the Taliban official visiting our State Department to meet with U.S. officials. Why on earth would the Bush administration allow a Taliban leader to visit the United States, knowing that the Taliban were harboring the man who bombed the USS Cole and our African embassies? Well, I guess 9/11 put a stop to that. When the invasion of Afghanistan was complete, we installed its new president, Hamid Karzai. Who was Hamid Karzai? He was a former advisor to UNICAL. Bush also appointed as our envoy to Afghanistan, Zalmay Khalilzad, who was also a former UNICAL advisor. I guess you can probably see where this is leading. Faster than you can say black gold, Texas tea, Afghanistan signed an agreement with their neighboring countries to build a pipeline through Afghanistan carrying natural gas from the Caspian Sea. Oh, and the Taliban? Well, they mostly got away. As did Osama bin Laden and most of Al-Qaeda.
Afghanistan has nothing to do with women's rights. Military intervention has nothing to do with humanitarian aid. And it seems to be common knowledge everywhere in the world except in North America. So it's a problem. And the problem is because Canada is involved. And our government has led us to believe through all sorts of layers of complications, such as human rights and providing schools and whatnot. Canada is involved in a combat mission to secure a country that has never attacked Canada, securing a country to build a pipeline. That is the reason our tax dollars are being spent in Afghanistan. So I've put together a few resources. Roy, have you got that file there?
Yeah, sorry.
Thank you. Did you help hand some of those out? Yeah, let's do the lights for a moment. If everyone could grab one of these.
Okay.